Right, guys, welcome back to the Adam Peeler Fitness Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a very, very strong 19-year-old named Aidan Roeder. Aidan, for those of you guys who don't know Aidan, you guys have better catch up and you guess what? You guys are here, so you're going to learn today. So, Aidan, just tell us your best lifts in competition, your records. You know, we'll have a non-humble brag to start.
All right, we'll start with a humble brag. My best competition number this was in October of 2020, a 595 pound or 270 kilogram squat, a 152 kilogram or 336 pound bench, and a 318 kilogram or 701 pound deadlift at 83 kilogram, 183 pound. And I'm 19 years old, so those are all the Teen 3, 18 and 19 national records for the US, and also unofficial world records on open powerlifting, basically. So yeah,
so that's he's clearly extremely strong, and I've always I heard of you through Sean Noriega, because he was just sharing you on his story. And I saw this beautiful sumo deadlift, and I was just like, wow. Like, because anybody who watches my sumo deadlift knows that it does not look like a sumo deadlift. It looks like a weird, like, sumo conventional type of a pole. And then I saw you and I'm like, holy crap, like, this is like really, really, really pretty. So I guess did deadlift kind of come really naturally for you with that technique, or is that something that you really had to evolve over time?
So naturally from the get-go, I'd say it was my best lift. I'm just kind of a little bit like my body's predisposed, just built for it. But it wasn't always like pretty like it is. I would, in terms of general like form, being like, it was always good, like always had a neutral back and everything. It never looked bad, I would say, but it was nowhere near as efficient as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did you do to kind of get to that point then, from, obviously getting to, starting out, you obviously having the basics down, but as anybody who has done a sumo deadlift knows, it's an extremely technical lift compared to every other power lift. So what were the main things that you had to do to, I guess, make this so repeatable? Because I think that's the big thing with technique. It doesn't matter if like only one rep is really good. Like, you want to have all your reps be good and be consistent.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I would kind of just like throw myself into the bar, and that worked up until like around like 560 when I got to 560 pounds. So that was around two years, maybe 2.5 years ago at this point. For my first competition, I hit 562, and then 6 months later I only hit 568. So there was a long period of time where I pretty much felt like I was stalling on deadlift. And it's because I just continued to not really have the greatest technique. I made no attempt to get better in terms of technique. I thought I would just get stronger because I was just a kid at that point. I didn't know any better. And so I had to do something. So basically the first step was learning how to pull slack and not just throwing myself into the bar. And within a month after I hit that 568 in comp, it was a hard 568. It wasn't like I smoked it or anything. About a month later, I hit 600. It wasn't programmed that day. I just YOLO'd 600 because I felt good. And that was after learning how to pull slack. And so my old coach definitely helped a ton. But I think one of the biggest things was just doing as much research as possible, looking through as many sources as possible to try and from like elite lifters, studying lifters who had similar leverages to me, I think was one of the biggest things. And just watching footage of them and picking up cues of what they did. One of the biggest things was like watching, like, do you know who Matthew Aramoni is?
Yes.
Yeah. I've picked out so many things from just watching him. I think like, yeah, guys like that. Sean has great technique. Kevin Tran was someone I watched a lot. Just guys with leverages similar to me. I just watched hours of footage of them, and then just adapted it to my technique. That amongst just picking up cues along the way, bracing properly, and then just biofeedback that I get from lifting myself and making small adjustments based on looking at my training and feedback from how a set feels, experimenting basically.
I like all those points. I think that you made a really, really good one early where you said studying the lifters who have similar leverages to you and probably similar muscular strengths. That's one of the reasons why I like Charlie Dixon so much, because we have similar leverages and he pulls very similarly to me. And so I just kind of learned a lot from looking over him, whereas you start off a lot more, upright than I can. Charlie also starts more bent over.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, obviously there's always going to be different technical cues that apply to everybody, and there's different principles that we always have to abide by in terms of, can you generate enough torque about the hip to keep your hip abducted, and then actually like press out and keep those joints stacked. Like, that's a skill in and of itself. And not many people actually are stronger in that position because of how they're built. But just being really, really consistent with it, constantly filming yourself and going off of how did that feel? Why did that feel like that? Because that rep felt really, really good. I would like for all my reps to feel like that.
Yeah.
That's something that I, admittedly, like, I don't have the most amazing deadlift technique. I think that I could get away with a lot just because I'm just naturally good at the deadlift and I have a strong back and hamstrings. But it's definitely, I thought it's really, really interesting hearing that you had that strength, that you're a stronger puller than 568, but then you just feel like you just did some technical alterations, became a little bit more aware of your technical cues and how your body was feeling, actually became aware of some things you probably weren't aware of in the past. And then all of a sudden, bam, 600 pounds.
Yeah. It was seriously like, I didn't, you can't get that much stronger in a month. And obviously it had been 6 months already and I hadn't gotten that much stronger. I think if someone's going to do this, if someone's going to research, like study a lifter with similar leverages, I identify like one or two things at a time. Don't try and completely copy them. Just identify one thing that you want to try and, try it in the gym. If it works, great. You've adapted that. If it doesn't work, then throw it out. Try another thing. Mm-hmm. Or if you get input from your coach, try 1-2 things at a time. And then master that before you move on to the next one. You don't want to try too many things at once, or else you just start to overthink everything. Nothing meshes well. And oftentimes, when you make a technical change, it will be a domino effect, and might just fix other things.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I always tell my clients, and they're like, and I just took them like one cue, and they're like, okay, what else? I'm like, I just want you to focus on this. We'll see what happens, because like what you said, that domino effect can happen. Like if you just teach a lifter who is very, very janky with their, or Yankee with their pulling, hey, I want you to think about tension, actually putting tension into your legs and not just your upper body. That can fix a lot of things, especially with like back angle and bracing and all that stuff.
Yeah. That just reminded me, another big thing was actually just messaging top lifters and asking them, someone who put out a bunch of content, and I just DM'd him to explain some things, was Chance Mitchell, who has very similar leverages to me, long arms, long legs. And he just, I'm going to make a few posts about one of the biggest things that I do. I'm going to make a post in the future about the long arm cue and how to pull slack properly, because most people don't know how to pull slack properly. They do it in a way that is not the best, but anyways, other than that, yeah, just message people, take the chance. There's there's a big chance that they maybe won't answer, but in my case, I got lucky and he did. So
Yeah.
and at that point, I was just like, I wasn't anyone special. So
I think that's something that's actually really cool about powerlifting and really bodybuilding too, for that matter. A lot of these athletes are really accessible, and they usually do want to help, especially if they are coaches themselves. So I guess so nothing wrong with starting off with a little bit of a deadlift rant. I always like talking about the deadlift. I guess now let's talk a little bit about how you got into lifting.
okay.
Because I always think it's interesting to know where people are coming from. So you and I already kind of had a conversation about this on Instagram, like my meet in March. But do you want to just walk us through that?
Yeah, I'll go through the origin story. So I started lifting just coming into high school. I was super skinny and I was honestly never really that good at like field sports all my life. But I was like athletic. I could run fast, I could jump far and whatnot, like when I was a kid, I guess. But I was never good or really like a big fan of it. I was more, I don't know, I was kind of a nerd. But I was way too skinny and I started really liking track actually. So we started lifting for track. And at that point I started becoming more like conscious of my body and stuff. And I was super skinny. I was 110 pounds coming freshman year, like 5'6", very small guy. So I needed to get a little bit bigger. And also my track coach encouraged me to lift. He was like, hey, put on some size so you can generate more power out on the track. But anyways, started lifting. After like a year or so, I'd gotten up to like 140. So I was at least normal sized. Yeah. We'll fast forward a bit. I ended up joining football because I moved like across the state and I had no friends. So I joined football to try and make some friends and get more in shape and whatever. I don't know, just for fun. That's where we seriously started like lifting, and my friends that I had from football introduced me to like more into bodybuilding and powerlifting and weightlifting and all that. I went over, it was the end of junior season of football. I went over to my friend's house. He's a gym in his basement, and we just like decided to max on deadlift that day. I had never done I had done a deadlift once before in my entire life, because all we did in football was squat, clean, and bench. So we didn't do deadlifts. We did trap bar, but that doesn't count. It does, but so yeah, the first time I deadlifted, I hit 340. So yeah, that was pretty decent. Prior to that, I told you I had deadlift once before, and I did like 225 for a triple back when I was like super skinny. I literally had to skip school for like 2 or 3 days because my back was in so much pain after doing that. Yeah, it was like an absolute RP, like one of the hardest sets I've ever done in my life. That was like 5 years ago at that point, and I still remember it. So, yeah. So after that, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna start taking this seriously, and I'm the type of person who, when I do something, I'm gonna try and get as good as I can as it and invest everything into it and nerd out all over it. I was super into video games at this point, so I kind of saw it as like leveling up myself, I guess. I don't know if you can relate to that.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite analogy about lifting is that it's literally like playing your own RPG.
Yeah. That's what it feels like at times. Especially because I was just a huge nerd.
I play Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So I hear you.
Yeah, I was super into like Destiny, if you know that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all about that, all over that. Yeah, so I started making progress really fast, and I started really loving it, and I felt like I was putting on size fast, and I'd felt the most confident I had in my life. It was affecting me socially, like I just felt more able to say what I wanted to because I'd been pretty socially awkward all my life before that. Um, and I just started like really falling in love with it. And then I went online. At that point, I wanted to know more, so I went online and kind of like saw videos of people powerlifting, and I think like one of the first videos I saw was like Mason Cabney. You remember that guy?
Mhm.
Like squatting like 600 at 163, or yeah. And I was like, wow, I didn't know people could get that strong. And that's when I like really like I looked up all like found all the names, found all the strong people, and I was just like super impressed by them. Like, wow, I want to be like that. I want to do that. So that's basically when I started. I probably hopped on the Candidos, did some 531 and whatnot, did the basic powerlifting program. Um, After that, track was my main sport at that point. Track, I was trying to lift and do track at the same time because track came after football. That ended up destroying my knees. Like I had to hobble, like I had to hold the walls to get into each class because it just destroyed my knees so much. So I ended up quitting track and going powerlifting like full time for the rest of that season. So yeah, I decided to sign up for my first meet. The like the fall after that. So that must have been fall of 2018, I believe. So that was my senior year of high school. I did my first meet. That was at 74. I did 424, 231, and then 562. So that was the meet that I was talking about where I hit 562. Ended up like really loving it, and that was the 16 to 17-year-old American record deadlift at the time. So I was like super invested. Um, Decided to sign up for high school nationals, and ended up winning that with a super close battle with two other guys. Actually, it wasn't like a runaway thing. High school that was an awesome meet, but that's where my at the time people were kind of like questioning like what I was kind of doing, like, oh, what is this powerlifting? Why'd you quit track and football over it? But that's when I won that, it kind of like solidified that what I was doing was legit, and that especially like my family and friends and close friends were like, okay, damn, you're actually in this for real.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's kind of that's also where that before that first meet is where I hired my coach that I had for almost like 2.5 years. So that was Kyle Bauer was his name.
Yeah.
Now I'm with Sean Noriega. So yeah, that's my whole story
Yeah.
coming into powerlifting, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's I always like how it always comes from sort of for most people from like an athletic background of some sort. I was doing something and then I realized I actually really like lifting part more than the actual practicing the sport part, the actual skill component of the sport. I just love the weight room. Because for Russell Orhe, that was like what it was. Like he was like, bro, like I don't want to keep getting hit hard. Like, and I don't want to, keep dealing with all this stuff. I like lifting more than I like, playing football. And so now I'm going to go and start lifting, for full. And then I always find it interesting how people always say I started getting some clap back because it was like, because powerlifting, especially like, I think it's only gotten like really like, I guess, socially acceptable in a sense right now. Like you still can't make money from being a professional power lifter. Um, you have to do other avenues to actually monetize yourself in the sport.
Yeah.
But it's something that's just like not seen as like a real sport. It's like a hobby. It's just like, I come to the gym and I lift weights, and like I can see some of their like points, I guess, with it's in terms of sports, in terms of how much time it really does take, and I guess like the actual physical toll on your body for most part. I mean, if you're talking about football versus powerlifting is like way easier than playing for football and having to handle all that stuff.
Yeah. I think the appeal of powerlifting is, I mean, you don't have to, it's like 2 to 3 hours of your day. But it's available to anyone really. As long as you don't have too much of a time commitment of other things, but it's available to, the average guy.
Yeah, I think that even with the time commitment thing though, like you have these elite athletes like Hunter Henderson, who just squats 650 at the Kern, who trains 4 days a week and is a nurse. Like that's your full-time job. Like that's a job to do that. And I know that's what you're in school for right now.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a more accessible thing, and it can be something that's less invasive with your life, and you can still be very, very, very elite at it. So
yeah. Whereas like other sports that they're gonna have to that's their entire day. Yeah.
It's their entire day, but they're also getting paid.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's like these. It's a little bit weird. Greg Nuckols, actually in Stronger by Science podcast, was saying that he wondered what if you could actually make money from this sport and you could treat it like every other sport and actually train for like 4 hours a day or something like that. And like, kind of like Oxygen Gym in Kuwait style for bodybuilding. Like what if that was like all that you did and like you got paid like from just power? Like what would happen with the sport? And I think that's like an interesting proposition. However, I don't think that there's a necessity to do that to actually get really good at powerlifting. I just don't think so.
Yeah, I don't believe it might not actually help that much. It would be interesting, but I mean, someone I can think of, I guess, is Russell has like a whole bunch of business stuff, but I guess he probably, I mean, he does do this for a living. Russell does. Mm-hmm. That's the only person I can really think of that's super competitive, I guess. Or anyone that just coaches. Yeah.
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 Sure. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like you aren't like having a salary for like the USAPL.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you listened to the last 2 highlights of the podcast, but the president of the USAPL actually came on. He said that like that's actually his dream, is for people to actually be able to make money directly from the sport.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. What an idea that I've heard been throwing around is that's been thrown around. I think it was Joe. I've even thought of this myself before too, but Joe put it into words. Joe Stanek. He put it on a story the other day that one of his ideas is like maybe the USAPL, if they leave the IPF, turns into something like the NBA, NFL, whatever, where they accept members from all around the world. And then the USAPL will pay a stipend to the top 10 lifters if they can retain in the top 10.
I like that idea. It makes things a lot more interesting. You certainly attract even better competition.
And that'll be top 10 worldwide, not only in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically expanding the USAPL's reach, not just the USA.
Yeah.
Because it's the most competitive federation in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I guess going forward then. So with in terms of coaches, so you start off with the Kevin Cool guy, correct? Is that what you said?
Kyle Power.
Sorry. Kyle Powers. I got the right first consonant.
Yeah.
And now Sean Noriega. So I guess how much has a coach helped you with your success as a power lifter? Like, and like what I mean by that is, do you think you'd be in the same spot that you are today without the guidance of those 2 people?
No, not at all. I don't think I would have. The help that someone who's far more experienced than you just helps immensely. It'll bring out if you have a good coach, they'll bring out the best in you. I was already slowing down before I got a coach, which, I mean, I was far weaker and far less, muscular. Like, I just had less muscular maturity and everything. And I was already slowing down. And then once I hired a coach, it was like, it's a game changer for sure, without a doubt.
So how did having a coach elevate you?
Well, when I had hired a coach, I didn't know anything. I was kind of lost. Again, my technique was, it wasn't bad, but it was, as far as efficient goes, just not at all for it to optimize strength. So that it helped me a ton there. Yeah, I just think the hiring coaches just made me into the person I am today.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's something that where you talk about where, yeah, man, I was stalled out like right before I hired a coach, and I think that's actually a really really big thing for lifters, because like, and a part of me doesn't like talking about it, but I mean I'm going to talk about it. People always ask me, and for example, and I'm not as strong as you are, but like, how did you get strong? How did you make consistent progress? Because there has not been one time throughout my lifting career I haven't made some sort of progress. I've always made some sort of progress. And I always say, well, I had help from day one. I don't think that it's 100% necessary to have a coach at the beginning. I think that if you just find like a template program like you did, like the Candido 6-week or something decent like that, you're going to thrive off of that, and you're going to milk out those new gains once you get past that point. And for some people, like, their novice progression is only 3 months. For some people it's like 1 month. That's when you should probably consider getting good programming, probably getting coaching, and getting somebody there to just help you with the mentality of training and understanding what's happening. Like, for example, like with RPE, for the longest time, like, I had no idea like why you would train with RPE. Like, I had no idea. I couldn't conceptualize it. And then I kind of started understanding the concept and how adaptations occur with the stress thing, and like, how fatigue impacts fitness, how RPE kind of, allows you to work with those different levels of readiness. And good coaches help you understand those things and kind of gain an edge. And I think the biggest one for me is just confidence with my programming, because I can program for myself and you can program for yourself, because you coach for other people too. But it's really hard to be objective with yourself, and a coach there can just say like, no, like, this is okay, like, let's keep following the plan. Like, it's like we're in volume. I know you're tired. I know like your 1 rep max might not be like at that much higher, but don't worry, like it'll come when it's time or whatever. Like, I don't know, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So what I think is, definitely, like, I wouldn't want to coach myself. I could, but I'd prefer someone else take care of that. It's almost like hard to look back and think about when I was younger, because it almost hurts to think of how little I knew. And that's, you don't know how little you know until someone more experienced comes across. Comes around. Like you, I had no concept of RP. I was just clueless when I came to my coach. So, do I feel like, with the knowledge I hold now, I could have coached myself to where I am now? Yeah, I think I could. But even then, I'd prefer someone else.
Yeah, it's something that I don't think that you really do want to understand its value until you actually do put in that investment. And if it's any, like, with, you do your homework and you look into a good coach, like there are several resources on YouTube with what to look for in a coach, and whatnot. But I guess I know that for me, like when I was choosing a coach, like I always looked more like what's their credentials, like what have they done for other lifters, and do all of their lifters make progress, like not just one of their lifters, like not just their star athletes. And I think that's a really really big thing. And then just like second, just like having the personality gel, because the coaching is mostly a relationship.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why you hired Sean, because Sean has a very clear track record of success with his athletes and of all different types.
Yeah, when I decided to switch coaches, I definitely did my research on all of my considerations, like lots of research. I asked around to all of your clients, different types of strength levels. I literally just DM'd. I went through their like whoever tagged them just to see who their lifters were. I messaged them, asking them what they think of their coach and everything, all different types of strength styles. I obviously I did a little investigation on each of them because I wanted to make sure the person I'm going to go with is going to be the best for me. And I just came down to it. I felt Sean felt like the most consistent.
Yeah. Well, it's been really, really cool seeing your progression with the programming and whatnot. I guess I wanted to ask them, what does your training look like right now in terms of like how many days per week you squat, bench, and deadlift training days, um, that type of stuff.
All right. So yeah. So something great about Sean that he's really done for me is to work. Um, he wrapped my program around my school schedule basically, which is awesome. Because I specifically do homework on some days of the week. I'll do like like when it comes to powerlifting, like some days I'm in the gym for so long that like I don't have time to do homework. So I'll have certain days of the week where I just do like 5-6 hours of homework, and I do all my homework for the week in one day, just because that's how I make this work. That's how I fit lifting into my like college schedule. So right now I squat twice a week, deadlift twice a week, and then bench 4 times a week. Lifting 5 days a week. So yeah, but like I said, the one of the biggest things, because it's taken. Sean has me doing a lot of volume, quite a lot of volume, and I'm doing more than I was before on all 3 lifts. But because he's made the program around my schedule, it almost feels like I'm doing less.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point with if you do have a busy schedule, having everything work around with your programming and whatnot. That's I think a huge red flag for any coach that they don't ask about your lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure.
How busy are you? What days do you have more time? Like for example, if I have athletes who I know work desk jobs, nine to fives, and they tell me, yeah, I have more time on the weekends to lift, I'm probably going to give them more of their volume on certain lifts on the weekend, or on days that they actually have more time to train. Because I mean, if you're stressed out about like getting through your session, you're not going to enjoy it as much, and you're not going to
No,
get as much in return from it.
your performance is going to hurt. Yeah, so it's decreased stress in and out of the gym, and which has just been a feedback to better quality of life both ways.
Yeah. So I guess with 4 days a week benching, then how does that work for you? Because I think a lot of people hear about 4 days a week benching, and they're always kind of curious about how it works. So I guess for the listeners, how does Sean structure your bench press schedule?
All right. So I guess to start off, I don't bench more than I don't bench more than 2 days in a row. I bench 2 days in a row in the beginning of the week, and then the other 2 days are separate. And it's not like I've always benched 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
From the get-go, I started at 2 times when I hired Kyle, worked up to 3 times, eventually to 4, and I've done 4 for pretty much like the past year and a half, maybe longer at this point now. I do that year round. I don't ever go to 3, just for me personally. This is a personal thing. I have quite. I think this might just be from being in athletics and being in track, having efficient technique too. I have a pretty big, like, I can handle a lot of volume. I have a pretty big workload, or work capacity, I guess. And I have pretty good tissue resilience. my body can handle a beat down from volume basically. And so I guess the volume is just between the 4 days is distributed well enough that I'm not doing too much on one day, and it's like and the intensity, it's not RP, 8 to 10 every day. It's usually in the 6 to 7 range, and it's like a chain. I'm not doing too much on one day. Each session is like chained together almost, where I'm not doing too much one day and the chain falls apart because of that. Each session can link together.
Yeah. So going off that, I think you just with the whole chaining thing. I think that's a really, really good point. How I just describe that is momentum building, because anybody can blow their load on an RPE to 810. Like anybody can do that. But the problem is that that's just not going to lead to long-term progress in really any lift. It's about like accumulating, like what you said, lots of volume if you can handle it. You guys and you and I just talked about this. Like volume is king, and like Eric is having me do insane amounts of volume right now, and it's like tough, but it's just like I can handle it though, because I have a high work capacity, and I as well have a very high tissue resiliency. But I think that when you are talking to any lifter, my biggest piece of advice with any power lifter is to don't worry about PRing right now, because nobody cares if you're PRing right now. All that matters is, are you PRing on the platform? And unless you've competed and actually stepped on the platform, like just gym lifts, just like they're like it's cool setting like new PRs in the gym, but I'm always just like, okay, who cares? Like I want to get on the platform to prove that I can actually do this in a meet setting, because it's different.
Yeah, I never go off program, like ever. If anyone's listening out there, and if there's any RP doubters here, this is why RP can be very valuable, because you do lower RP work that still is providing stimulus. Well, you can do a whole lot more volume if you're not killing yourself, and it's almost like dropping pennies in a bucket, and those pennies are going to add up over time, rather than like spilling the bucket and having to start over, I guess, from overshooting. That's the comparison I can think of right now.
Yeah. So how I currently structure my programming, how Eric has it is, I have basically I squat 2 days per week, and one of them is a lower exertion safety bar squat, and then the other one is like a top set on comp squat, and then I do down sets with pause squats. And something that I really, really like about that is that I think it's something to with self-limiting variations, is that you usually don't have an ego attached to your pause deadlift or your pause squat. And so if you're doing a top set like at 8 to 9, which is usually around where Eric has me, and then down sets for the volume accumulation, then you actually then that's where the real work is done. Because I think people always get confused, and data-driven strength has made a great graphic about this. That training is not a test. It is not a test. Training, you're there to train. You're there to get better, and you need to focus on, like what you said, the lower RPE, 5 to 7 with powerlifting is stimulative enough for you to accumulate tons of volume, be able to come back, as opposed to if you're just doing 2 sets at RPE 10, because that's all that you can recover from. The magnitude of that stimulus to put adaptations is not very high.
No.
Now maybe that might work in the short term. Maybe you're coming off a volume block, you're tapering down for a meet, you do 2 max out maximal effort sets, and then you come back to the next session and you're just peaked because the volume dropped. But that's just you masking that's just you dropping that fatigue to actually build up what actually happened. And I think a lot of powerlifters don't like doing the volume because it's not as exciting as a 1 rep max. Because powerlifters are a little bit weird, where they're they see normal people see the bar bending, and they're just I'm really scared. The powerlifters are this is yes, I want to lift that weight.
Yeah. A big pet peeve is people complaining about their back down volume work. Do you want to get stronger? Well, then stop complaining and do these to the best of your ability, you know?
Yeah, like I had to do like 7 back down sets of bench after my top set, after my top double, and like that's why I always say like do the boring work, do your job. Like the back down work is not exciting. It's not that hard. Like I generally believe if you're training properly, your back down work should not be that hard. It should be hard enough, but not
It should be
that hard.
difficult, but
Yeah. So yeah, I guess going off of so in terms of meets and whatnot, because meet day is a massive skill. What do you do to handle yourself at meets, or what is your mindset going into a meet, because you've had these high level performances?
Yeah. So I think my most two successful meets are probably my high school nationals performance and my Midwest primetime performance, which is my most recent meet where I did the 1632 total 701 deadlift. My best numbers, and honestly, I think the biggest performance was just the Midwest primetime one, because that was an accumulation of all the meet experience that I had gotten so far. Something that at high school nationals, I had have a pretty big cut, but I recomp something that I learned from the meet before that was that I didn't eat enough. So come high school nationals, I ate more and recomped better. So that was the biggest thing I learned from that meet. That's why it has was successful that meet. Come the next meet after that was regular nets, like just raw nationals, and I was way too nervous, way too in my head, and it just like it killed my strength. I died out early just because I was so anxious, and all this anxiety that I had, I couldn't eat anything, and that's why I died out. I couldn't eat anything because I was so nervous, and like my body just was rejecting food and water. So what I did at Midwest Primetime was I listened to calm music, which is the exact opposite thing that people do at meets. They listen to hype music. I have to listen to calm music to calm me down. And guess what happened? I was able to eat. I was able to feel great, and it literally just felt like I had the same strength that I had in the gym, which usually never happens for me. It had never really happened for me in a meet before. But that was the first time where I felt like all three of my lifts transferred perfectly, and that's just because I was able to actually get in food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the 2 hour weigh-in, I think it is something that's a lot more important, because in the short term, like you got to worry more about that hydration, the sodium getting in, and then enough carbs for your glycogen to resynthesize in the muscle if you've dropped that weight. Because like there's a Stronger by Science had a review, and it mass did about like saying like even just a modest glycogen depletion actually does impact lifting performance like pretty substantially.
Oh yeah, it definitely does for me.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. If I feel good, like I feel like I wake up with like a pump, I know it's going to be a good lifting day. If it's flat, I know it's like, okay, like I gotta drink a lot of water, I gotta pound some sodium, I gotta make sure I'm getting like at least my 1 gram per kilogram of carbohydrate pre workout to make sure I have that fuel, or eat a few meals before I go train. But I then, like you said that you had to listen to relaxing music.
Yeah, it's because I get
I'm the
tons
same
of
way.
nerves.
So I people ask me like, what do you listen to when you train? I listen to like Taylor Swift for no other reason than it makes me feel relaxed. I feel relaxed. I can focus on my technique. I'm not using that psychological energy, like you said, like you're just so anxious, you died out early. That happens if like if I'm having like a big top set, like then I will listen to like Rage Against the Machine or something like that. But like I guess handling that psychological arousal was really what stuck out to me, is that in a meet setting, handling your levels of psychological arousal throughout it was something that just really made a big difference for you.
Yeah, that it did. Because I would try to get hyped, like I'd try to stay at a hype level throughout the entire meet, and that just wouldn't work for me because I'd just burn out all my fuel. I'd get super anxious and try and be like at full arousal during the entire time. And it just burned me out. And then my deadlifts never at Nats, like I had done 620, or I think 620 in the gym, and like I failed like 606 at Nats, and no weight cut.
Yeah.
So that just didn't make any sense. And what happened was literally 2 days after the meet, I pulled 633, just because that's just like I had a full tank again.
Yeah.
And it was easy. So
one of my biggest pieces of advice to people at meet, especially if it's their first time, is talk to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Ask questions, get to know people in your class. Like, because chances are, and like, always try to find like those new lifters too, especially if it's your new one and the experienced ones, and like just try to make friends. Like, even if you are like more on the introverted side, I found that does make people calm down all the time. Like what I did on my last meet was like I really found the new lifters in my flight, and I helped them understand like, we should probably warm up, like just work, do this with me, we'll be fine. And something else too with handling psychological arousal, because I know that USAPL meets are much shorter than USPA. Like you guys are usually done in like 3 hours.
Yeah, high school nationals for me was like less than 2.5 hours.
Yeah, so USPA meets, if you're there from the morning until the night, and that's something that like with a lot of my lifters do compete in the USPA, just because generally lifters in certain federations attract the lifters in certain, coaches in certain federations attract lifters in certain federations. So like for myself, whenever I have an athlete who's doing like the full power meet, US, PA, I usually say like, look, so you're going to need to like bring a lot of food, and then like don't just sit down all day, because you're going to get tired, and by the time deadlift rolls around, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like I want to take a nap. But something that I do is like I walk around like in between my lifts, because like I remember at this last meet actually, I did my squat, and squats just fatigue me like nothing else. And I was just like, holy crap. Like I sat down, I felt myself falling asleep, and I was like, nope, like gotta get up, gotta walk around, I gotta talk to people, because I'm extroverted too, so talking helps me feel more energized. So yeah, but I guess my whole point in saying that is that whatever meet that you are doing, and this is another reason that you should have a good powerlifting coach if it's your first meet, so that you know how to handle it, what expectations you should have, how you should probably select your meet attempts, especially on your first meets, and then how to just handle yourself throughout the entire competition. You'll learn a lot, because like your first meet is always just a learning experience, and the more that you do compete, the more you learn your body and how you respond to different variables, like weight cutting. That's something I've never done, because I've always been underweight. I've always been a light 82.5. But like also just like, how much does my bench tend to peak? Like, can I plan on more? How much does squat? How much more can I plan on squat? What about deadlift? Like for myself personally, and I don't know, Eric Helms talks about this, but I have not seen bench peaks like that are crazy. Usually I find it's about what you hit in the gym. Squat, it depends. Squat's the most finicky, but for myself, I found deadlift always just reliably peaks, like about 5%.
I've found for me personally, squat peaks a lot for me. Bench is about the same. If I make a cut, it maybe loses 5 pounds. And deadlift is the exact same as I hit in the gym.
Yeah. So again, like that's every lifter's a bit different. And that's, again, for you guys that are listening who are doing your first meet, pick conservative weights for your first meet. There's no shame in going 9 for 9.
Yeah. You're talking about variables like how weight cut affects you, etc. Something I've learned is that I need to take about 5 kilograms under a true RP10 for squat, so that I can function properly on deadlift.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I need to take like an RP like 9 to 9.5 squat, or else my deadlift tanks.
So that makes sense, because you're like USAPL, you guys have less time. I think that's actually something that I can get away with competing in the USPA, because I have more time to recover in between those lifts. Like I have like 6 hours in between my squat and then my deadlift. Because I can definitely say like if I had like 2 hours between, like I probably wouldn't have as good of a deadlift. So it's just interesting seeing how all those variables kind of can and do impact each other. So I guess do you plan on still staying in the 83s for a while, or are you planning on moving up to like 93 to 93s or even 105s?
I will probably never go 105, but I think 93 and maybe two to 2.5 years is what I'd estimate.
Because how tall are you?
5'8".
Oh dang! So you'll be a big 93 then.
Yeah, 5'8's already like tall for 83, honestly. Because
yeah, I always have to like remind myself that I'm 6 foot tall. And, like I'm already feeling out like 82.5. I'm really.
You should definitely go 198. I think.
Everybody's like that's the long term plan. Eating's hard, Aidan. I guess. So in terms of eating, then do you track your macros pretty consistently, or are you more just like aware of like your general like calories and protein? Like how I guess strict are you?
I track everything.
Love it. I think that's something that more people should do in powerlifting too. I work with TSA for the listeners, and they make all their athletes track.
Like, yeah, it's like an on and off switch.
Yep. It's really not that hard. Like if you're serious about your sport, like just get the food scale, like learn how to track. It takes you like it takes us a little bit of time, but that's what your coach is there to help you out with. Like this is like, so I guess like in terms of like a full day of eating for Aidan, like what does an old day kind of look like? Yeah, like
I guess I'll just break it down in terms of carbs, fat, and protein. What are my main sources? Like we'll start with carbs. Basically, like a ton of bagels, bread, pasta, cereal. That's literally like I get a ton of carbs. I get in over 500 so a day. So it's pretty much
over here.
What?
650 over here.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I'd say that those main sources. Sometimes I'll have oatmeal. I found that like oatmeal doesn't sit well when I lift though, so I cannot have it before I lift. Protein, just meat, chicken, beef, turkey, lunch meat, whey, Greek yogurt, just stuff like that. And then fat, usually just like I don't need anything for fat. It just ends up being what I need by the end of the day. You know?
Cool. Right. So I guess to wrap things up, what are your long-term goals in the sport? Like where do you want to be by the time that you leave the junior class?
Definitely like wow, that's I would say I want to go to Worlds, but IPF, I mean if USAPL and IPF split, then I'm hoping USAPL makes some, if they do split, they make some kind of world equivalent. I don't know. The state of powerlifting is a little uncertain, I guess, in that department. But in terms of goals, the way I think about goals is a little bit more short term, I guess. I have a long-term goal, and I have like a intermediate goal. Intermediate's usually like from meet to meet. Long-term is like in a few years, and then short-term is just like block by block. And usually that's the way I think. I just usually like I'll get a block, or I'll see generally what I have. I get programming week by week, not by month, but I'll get a block, and I'll generally think of the course plan that I want to go, and it's mainly the goals that I set, and then I'll set micro goals, just what I need to do on a daily basis. And I just need to make sure I keep meeting that over and over again, because as I see it focusing on the inputs I'm making now will make the outputs of my longer term goals possible. So that's mainly what I focus on. But if I'm talking in terms of like what I want to achieve, I definitely want to win. I mean, I guess it's always been my dream to become a world champion. So
yeah, I like how you said that. I mostly focus on the here and the now and doing the best I can right now. Because sometimes it's really easy as lifters to think, oh, like, I want to hit like these goals, like these numbers, like this is my dream goal. But your whole mindset is something that I really vibe with, I guess. Because it's like, look, like, let's focus on doing our job right now. Let's get like the numbers that, like, oh, like maybe I hit, this for this top set and this training cycle. Okay, I want to do 10 pounds heavier than that on this training cycle, or something like that. And I saw something else too that I think is interesting is with my programming, some of the programming I give my clients, I have some like prescribed loads. I'd say like it's not RPE based, it's percentage. And then I'm like, if you're outpacing this percentage, like that's a good thing, but like stick to the programming. Like it's a percentage for that reason. But again, it's for that, just focusing on doing things for like right now, focusing on the inputs, so then you get the outputs in the future. Because as long as you're doing things right and you're on a good program and you're taking attention to your variables, you're going to see results. And I think that you have all the basically what I got from you is I want to be the best. Like that's what I want to do, and I'm going to do everything in my power to be the best of my sport.
Yeah, it's just take care of. If I'm like, there's no other option. If I'm going to be the best, I have to take care of these daily, weekly, monthly inputs. It just has to be done. So that's my main goal, is just constantly meeting those, just so I can achieve some sort of perfection, or close to it, or just chasing perfection, I guess.
Well, I love it. I think that just judging from recent race of progress and whatnot, how you're consistently improving, with each post that you do put up, you're definitely going to be something like you already are freaking a freak, but you're going to be even freakier, as you keep focusing on those inputs. So I guess I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me for an hour. If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
Just Aidan Roeder on Instagram, Aidan Roeder. Just that's my username. I have a YouTube channel that I occasionally post on just under the same name, Aidan Roeder. That's really it. That's the two things I post on. So, yeah.
Cool, yeah, guys, make sure to follow him. Watch that crispy sumo deadlift technique that we talked about exclusively for like the first 10 minutes. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.